You think you know the story of faith, that Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they sprang up from nothing, fully formed, sacred, original. But here's the strange part. They didn't. Not really. Every modern religion carries echoes of ancient beliefs nobody talks about. Rituals, myths, even moral rules, borrowed, stolen, repurposed across centuries. Stories of gods walking the earth, floods that wiped out humanity, miraculous births. These didn't start with the Bible or Quran. They are shadows of forgotten religions, whispers of a time before organized faith. And if you really knew the truth, it would change how you see your own faith or your doubts. In the next 20 minutes, we're peeling back the veil on the religions that time forgot, revealing the hidden threads that secretly shaped the rituals, laws, and ideas we take for granted today. This isn't just history. It's a mirror, and what you see might surprise you. The religions before religion. Before gods had names, humans had stories. Stories of creation, of destruction, of heroes and monsters that walked among them. Sumer, Egypt, India, these civilizations were teeming with gods, spirits, and rituals long before the first pages of the Bible or Quran were written. And these weren't simple fables. They were guiding systems for life, death, and everything in between, carefully crafted to explain the world when science had no answers. But here's the conflict. These beliefs didn't vanish when new religions arose. They didn't disappear quietly in some forgotten corner of history. They were folded, repurposed, and hidden inside the faiths we now consider original. Every god, every miracle, every sacred story carries a trace of what came before. You can see it if you look closely. Take a moment and think about it. Every myth you've been told, every parable you grew up hearing, may have a shadow history. A history that stretches back thousands of years, across continents, across cultures. A history that whispers in the rituals we perform, the prayers we recite, the morals we hold sacred. These ancient religions gave humans a framework to understand the unexplainable, to find meaning in chaos. They taught ethics before law, morality before scripture, and when new faiths emerged, they borrowed these frameworks, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, but always in a way that shaped the way humanity would worship for centuries to come. And that shadow, that hidden lineage, is still alive today. It shapes everything we believe about gods, about the afterlife, about morality, and even about ourselves. We are worshiping echoes of echoes. So, as we step into this journey, keep one thing in mind. What you think is original may not be. What you think is sacred may have roots older than any temple, older than any scripture. And understanding this hidden history is the first step in seeing faith in a new, deeper light. Borrowed gods. Did you know that Zeus, Osiris, and Mithras left fingerprints on Jesus? Not metaphorically, literally. The stories of miraculous births, divine intervention, even resurrection were not unique inventions. They existed centuries earlier, told and retold in temples and marketplaces across Europe and the Middle East. These myths carried lessons, warnings, and hope for people who had no science to explain life or death. Miracles, moral lessons, tales of gods walking among humans, they didn't vanish when a new faith appeared. They were recycled, adapted, and woven into the narratives of emerging religions. The resurrection story? It has parallels in Osiris. The virgin birth? Seen in myths of Mithras. Even certain moral codes echo the lessons of older deities. The past didn't disappear. It simply wore a new mask. And it gets darker. This wasn't always about honoring the old gods. Religious leaders didn't hide these borrowed stories because they feared discovery. They rebranded them. They repackaged them for control, for influence, for power. Temples became political centers. Stories of the divine became a way to command obedience. Faith was never just spiritual. It was social, economic, and political. Now think about this. If your God is borrowed, if the rituals you practice trace back to civilizations long vanished, does that make your faith any less sacred? Or does it make it more human, more connected to the collective history of mankind? The answer isn't simple. Reverence and origin are not the same thing, yet we treat them as if they are. And here's the haunting part. These borrowed gods, these recycled myths, are still shaping belief today. The echoes of ancient faiths ripple through churches, mosques, and temples, shaping how millions pray, obey, and live. Every time a story is retold, the old gods whisper through it, reminding us that no faith exists in isolation. So when you close your eyes and picture your deity, remember this: that image has a lineage. It carries shadows of distant civilizations, of gods long forgotten, of stories older than your own belief. And seeing that lineage changes everything. Forgotten rituals, alive today. Blood rituals, fertility rites, sun worship. They might seem like relics of a distant past, lost to time. And yet, their echoes are everywhere, woven into the ceremonies and holidays we take for granted. The truth is, nothing is ever fully erased. It lingers in symbols, in traditions, in the rhythm of human life itself. Take Easter, for example. Most people think it is purely a Christian celebration, marking resurrection and renewal, but its roots reach far deeper, tied to ancient spring festivals celebrating fertility, life, and rebirth. The egg wasn't originally a symbol of Jesus rising. It was a symbol of life returning to the world after a harsh winter. And Christmas, before the nativity story was attached, was a festival of the winter solstice, a celebration of the sun returning to the sky, of hope in darkness. Christianity simply adopted it. And yet, millions of people celebrate these holidays without ever realizing their original meaning. They cling to rituals that are not theirs, that predate their faith by centuries, because culture is stronger than truth. Tradition carries weight. Familiarity carries comfort. Humans are wired to follow patterns, to honor customs even when the original reason has faded. But here's the strange tension. By participating, we inherit layers of history we don't fully understand. We repeat actions that shaped entire civilizations without even noticing. Every candle lit, every ritual performed, is a whisper from the past. A shadow of human belief and ingenuity. And that raises a question you can't ignore. Why do we honor stories and customs that aren't our own? Why do we allow history, repackaged as faith, to guide our lives so completely? The answer lies not in spirituality alone, but in psychology, in the deep human need to belong, to connect, to follow what is familiar, even when the truth behind it is long forgotten. These rituals aren't dead. They are alive. And every time we practice them, knowingly or not, we are continuing a story that began thousands of years before any church was built. The moral blueprint that was stolen. Long before Moses received the Ten Commandments, humans were already writing rules for living. The Code of Hammurabi in Mesopotamia, Egyptian laws carved into stone, Sumerian edicts, they were all attempts to define right and wrong, order and chaos, justice and punishment. These weren't arbitrary. They were survival guides, social contracts, blueprints for civilization. And then came religion. The Ten Commandments didn't appear in isolation. They didn't drop from the sky into a vacuum. They were built on top of ideas that had existed for centuries. Moral structures were borrowed, edited, sanitized, reframed as divine commands. What was once practical guidance for humans became laws proclaimed by God. The conflict is subtle but profound. Morality as divine law is often human history dressed in a sacred cloak, with obedience framed as reverence. Think about it. Every rule you've been told is sacred. Every moral line etched into the conscience by religious teaching carries a lineage. Someone, somewhere, decided centuries ago that this behavior preserved order, that action prevented chaos. And it was codified, repeated, worshipped, until we forgot its origin. But here's the real tension. When morality is handed down as divine, questioning it feels like blasphemy. And that is precisely the point. Human laws given the stamp of divinity become unchallengeable, absolute, and powerful. They shape obedience, fear, devotion, and even the way societies function for generations. And yet, beneath the surface, it's all human. It is a story written by people, adapted, repurposed, and dressed in the language of heaven. Once you see it this way, morality is no longer a set of rules imposed from above. It becomes a map of human priorities, human fears, human hopes, carried forward through time as if it were divine. So the next time you hear someone say God commanded it, pause. Every rule, every commandment, every moral edict has a story older than Scripture, older than the faith itself. And understanding that story reveals how deeply human the sacred really is. Gods of politics. Religion was never only about the spirit. It was a tool, a strategy, a way to organize societies, control populations, and maintain power. Long before modern governments, kings and emperors discovered that belief could shape behavior in ways laws alone never could. It could command loyalty, enforce morality, and even justify conquest. The pharaohs in ancient Egypt ruled as gods themselves. They were not just leaders, they were divine, unquestionable. Their power was absolute, and religion gave it legitimacy. People followed not only because they feared earthly punishment, but because they believed defying the divine was a sin. Every ritual, every temple, every priest reinforced the structure of control. Fast forward to Constantine and the Roman Empire. Christianity was not merely adopted as a personal faith, it became a political instrument. By aligning religious authority with the empire, he unified vast populations under a single moral and legal framework. Obedience to God became obedience to the state, and it worked. Power disguised as piety. Medieval popes understood the same principle. Spiritual authority and political influence were inseparable. The promise of salvation or the threat of excommunication shaped behavior far more effectively than armies or taxes alone. Religion became both sword and shield, guiding societies and consolidating power across kingdoms. And here is the haunting truth. Even today, our political systems, our laws, our cultural norms, reflect the structures first built by these ancient rulers. Religion and governance were never truly separate. They co-evolved, and their echoes persist. Your modern faith is not just faith, it is inheritance. Layers of history, strategy, and authority built upon the beliefs of countless generations. When you pray, when you follow, when you obey, remember this: you are participating in a system shaped not only by spiritual insight, but by centuries of political design. Understanding this does not diminish belief. It reveals its depth, its complexity, and its power. It shows how human ingenuity can disguise control as devotion, and once you see it, you can never view faith the same way again. The lost philosophies. Long before organized religion claimed the stage, humans were searching for answers in philosophy. They asked the questions that would define civilization. What is life? What is good? What is suffering for? Stoicism, Epicureanism, Zoroastrian wisdom, and countless other schools of thought tried to grapple with existence without invoking divine command. They were attempts to understand the world, to guide behavior, to find meaning. Yet most of these philosophies are forgotten today. Their names fade in history books, their texts gather dust, and yet their ideas survive. They hide inside the parables, the moral lessons, and even the rituals of modern religions. When you read a sacred text, when you follow a moral code, when you wrestle with the concept of right and wrong, you are often engaging with ideas older than the faith itself. Here lies the conflict. Many believers assume that religion invented morality, that ethical behavior, justice, compassion, and honesty were gifts delivered from heaven. But in reality, these concepts often existed long before any scripture. Philosophers debated, observed, and reasoned out what humans should do to live in harmony with themselves and others. Religion inherited those ideas, codified them, and claimed them as divine law. And that inheritance explains why some questions remain unsettling, even for the faithful. Questions about life, death, suffering, or human purpose do not disappear under the weight of Scripture. They persist because morality is older than the faith that claims it. It is grounded in human observation, reflection, and the need to survive and thrive. This forgotten wisdom whispers through the ages, reminding us that belief is not the only path to understanding. That logic, reason, and human inquiry existed long before organized religion offered answers, and recognizing this does not weaken faith, it deepens comprehension. It reveals that the questions we wrestle with today are not new, and that the search for meaning has always been part of the human story. When you consider philosophy alongside religion, you see a different landscape, one where morality, ethics, and the search for truth are not gifts from above, but human achievements carried forward, hidden in plain sight, shaping how we think and live even now. Myths they couldn't kill. Even when entire religions rise and fall, myths persist. They do not disappear quietly into history. They echo across time, across civilizations, carrying the stories humans need, the stories that define them. Dragons, flood tales, miraculous births, heroes who defy death. These motifs repeat again and again in cultures that never knew each other. the human imagination, it seems, refuses to let them die. Take the flood story. You find it in Sumer, in Babylon, in the Bible. Each culture reshapes it, adapts it, gives it new names, new heroes, new gods. Yet the core remains the same: humanity humbled, the world reshaped, the promise of renewal. And virgin birth stories appear in multiple myths long before Christianity. Divine conception is not original, it is archetypal, woven into the collective unconscious of humanity. Here's the insight. Stories outlive dogma. Religions fade, empires collapse, yet the narratives persist. They move silently through time, hidden in ritual, in scripture, in art and literature. Even if you reject the ritual, even if you no longer believe, the narrative shapes your subconscious. It forms the frameworks through which you perceive morality, heroism, sacrifice, and destiny. Every time you question faith, you are confronting a ghost older than your culture, older than your ancestors. These stories are embedded in the human mind, in the way we imagine the world and our place in it. They survive because they serve a purpose: to teach, to warn, to inspire. They are humanity's memory of itself, encoded in myth. And that is why understanding myths matters. Not to diminish belief, not to attack faith, but to reveal the invisible threads that connect us across time. Every ritual, every parable, every sacred story you encounter today carries the imprint of countless generations who told it long before organized religion claimed it. These myths are alive, and they shape the way we live, think, and even question. Once you see that, faith is no longer just tradition. It becomes a dialogue with history itself, a conversation with the stories that refuse to die. Why it matters today. So why dig into forgotten religions? Why unearth the myths, the borrowed gods, the rituals, and the philosophies that time almost erased? Because understanding them frees you. It gives you a perspective that most people never have. It shows you that faith is human, deeply human, flawed, adaptive, and incredibly powerful. When you see belief as something humans created, shaped, and preserved, it changes everything. You stop seeing it as a rigid rule imposed from above. You start seeing it as a story told to help societies survive, to give individuals meaning, to shape morality, to control, to inspire. And once you understand that story, you can engage with it consciously, choose what resonates, and let go of what does not. This is not disrespect, it is liberation. Liberation from inherited assumptions, liberation from unquestioned authority, liberation from rituals followed blindly, from narratives accepted without thought. Knowing the origins of faith, the shadows that built it, the political power and human psychology that sustained it, allows you to step back and see clearly. And clarity changes your life. It changes the way you relate to belief, to others, to yourself. You no longer inherit a system you didn't choose. You recognize the layers, the history, the echoes, and you can navigate your own path. You can honor the wisdom, question the dogma, and carry forward the lessons that truly matter. This knowledge does not diminish spirituality, it deepens it. It allows faith to be something personal, something conscious, something alive. It reminds us that humanity has always been searching for meaning, for morality, for connection, and the more we understand where these ideas came from, the more freedom we have to shape our own lives. So as you move forward, remember this: every ritual, every story, every belief carries echoes of those who came before. And seeing that, understanding that, does not weaken faith. It strengthens your mind, your choice, and your soul. The religions we practice today are not isolated miracles. They are echoes, shadows, and reinventions of beliefs that came long before us. Recognizing that changes everything: how we worship, how we question, and how we live. Faith is human. History is human. And truth is ours to discover, if we dare to look. So the next time you question a story, a ritual, or a rule, remember, curiosity is not blasphemy. It is freedom. If you value truth over tradition, stay curious. And if this opened your eyes even a little, subscribe, because the journey of discovery is only beginning.